Good morning, everybody. I'm going to talk to you today really around digital transformation and how you move from tactical approaches to being very strategic in the way in which you do your digital transformation. Everyone wants to be digital. Guys, it's not moving. So every company wants to transform. These are statistics taken from before the pandemic. 2018, 91% of companies wanted to transform. 85% of companies felt they had to transform, otherwise they wouldn't be relevant and their business models wouldn't exist. But how do you sustain that transformation? How do you actually move from doing one project or an isolated project to doing a whole series of projects and transforming across the organization? That's the area we're going to look at in this session. I wanted to take COVID-19 as a bit of an example as to how digital enablement and digital adoption has increased and talk to you around some of the numbers. 95% digital adoption across Europe on average, 93% in the UK. That's the equivalent of 2 to 3 years growth in 9 months in digital adoption. 4.5 times the level of e-commerce in the UK alone compared to pre-pandemic. 64% of businesses in pandemic said they had to change their business models or they wouldn't exist. 24 times speed increase in the rate of moving workloads to cloud. The number of days dropped dramatically from 547 days pre-pandemic to just 24 during pandemic. So a massive movement to cloud and a 40 times increase in speed of enabling digital remote working solutions. So you can see here a major foundation of digital enablement. But was it actually digital transformation? Or was it actually just a level of digital enablement in an organization? Yes, loads of digital acceleration, lots of digital working technologies, a lot of digital adoption in many of the business continuity plans. But there is an argument that says that those business continuity plans should have been digital to start with, because a lot of them were heavily dependent on physical locations. No location, you have to find another way to do it. A lot of digital technology is adopted, and a lot of processes that were digitized, taking things from physical and analog to digital forms. But was it just tactical? We're at an interesting point now where hopefully pandemic is starting to open up and starting to move away. It'd be really interesting to see whether there's a lasting digital transformation taking place, or whether things will go back to how they were and people will not use those technologies as much. Many organizations have made lasting change, but how many of you know whether your business continuity plans, your processes and behaviors have really truly changed? Or are you simply just fitting technology pieces into your existing processes? How many of those processes are actually really transformed? And how long will that digital technology last when you start to go back to the workplace, to hybrid technologies where you can have physical meetings instead of Teams meetings and Zoom meetings all day long? So when you take something like a pandemic or some kind of disruptive effect in an organization, you typically get a period of shock and reaction and rapid response where you have to do something. And that's no different when you're trying to bring digital transformation into an organization, trying to bring digital technologies in. There's a level of shock and response, some of it internal, some of it external. You begin to react, you begin to plan, you begin to monitor, and you gain some insight as to how that's working. And you then start to build, slowly but surely, the right way and the right approaches. This is no different with digital transformation. You end it with a long-term vision. So your first two elements are uncertainty and risk, and you get clarity and focus coming out of the back. This is not an even journey. It's not the same journey for every organization. And you should be getting fluctuations over on that right-hand side, because change is good, because you're constantly correcting and evolving what you're actually doing. So what you have on the left-hand side is tactical transformation, where you're reacting and you're bringing things in and you're then trying to make things work and trying to find your way. The more you get to a pattern, the more you can monitor, the more you understand, the more you can get to strategic transformation across. And we're going to show you some examples of how you can do that. So how do you make that strategic digital transformation take place? Well, typically, most businesses, you've got your as-is processes, you've got your data, you've got your technology, and the data is key. to your strategic transformation. You've got to understand your data. You've got to know why you have your data. You've got to understand what you can use your data for. You have to do a level of assessment, a level of planning to understand what that means. And that planning really allows you to do this central piece you can see here to get to that point where you're doing repeated continual transformation. So you're actually repeating these processes, repeating these activities at a small scale and building incrementally into a much bigger, wider adoption across the organization. So we're not talking about big programs of change across the organization, big fanfares, big kind of organizations within the organization doing it. You're talking about small-scale, incremental change that builds as a continuous process. So you have to have that wider vision. You have to understand why are you doing this? Where do these things fit? How do they come together? And part of doing that is to challenge everything. So it's not just about doing a small piece and understanding that small piece. It's about seeing where that piece fits in that wider context. Because everything will constantly be changing, but you have to keep that central kind of vision and understand where you're going to take it to. The key part about achieving strategic transformation is understanding where the business value is. Because if you replace the technology, you replace the process, if you haven't actually added any new business value, doesn't matter how much time you spend on the technology and the process, you have to add something new. You have to add something that's different, something that enhances the organization. So understanding where that business value is, understanding what processes generate that business value, that's the key piece in going to a strategic transformation. Otherwise, it'll always be tactical in its nature. You have to monitor. You have to know where you are. You have to understand what kind of things you're doing and what the impact of those things are. So measures, outcomes, everything should be outcome-driven rather than process-driven. Key to doing strategic transformation is to make a series of big bets, if you like, on some core commercial platforms that you want to use. And it's using those platforms, whether that's cloud, whether that's a particular vendor. You build your mechanisms around one or more of those core commercial hubs. That gives you a level of innovation. It gives you a level of interoperability. You adopt open standards. You adopt agile ways of working. And you build around those core central elements. And you organize for speed and agility. So we're talking here about using agile methodologies, not necessarily in software delivery, but also in organizational delivery. Okay? And you should be looking to understand what you're doing and looking to fail fast. Okay? But in failing fast, you should also fail safe and fail small. What I mean by that is that you're working at a level of scale that if you do fail, the impact is limited and you understand why, and you haven't disrupted major elements of the business. So it's about granularity of change, it's about understanding how to position that change, and about making that change incremental. That entire continuum is how you get to a process of what Gartner would call digitalization. That digitalization gives you continuous incremental delivery of transformational outcomes. So you're building extra business value, whether that's in sales, whether that's in marketing, whether that's in finance. You're adding additional elements in continually into those processes, small projects, working together, understanding how they all link together. And that's what gives you that delivery of business value, and that's what gives you your organizational agility. Okay, so these are not things that are straightforward. You have to build the organization. You have to get them ingrained in the culture. So the things you should be focusing on, the things you should be looking at, is around that business value. Obtain that business value by digitalization. Evaluate approaches and outcomes. Question every aspect of what you're actually doing. Is it the right process? Am I at the right starting point? Have I got the right data? Why do we always do it this way? Looking at those different ways to understand this process and looking at complete new processes, not just taking pieces. If you take something and take it from analog to digital, all you're doing is digitizing. You're not digitalizing in the sense of changing the way that that process works. So digitalization is really all around using technology to re-engineer your business process to do something new and different that has a value. It's about getting new insights from data and understanding. It's about this incremental change. And you can't really do strategic transformation in isolation. You have to work with partners, you have to collaborate, whether that's customers, whether that's internally. Potentially that might be even with competitors to get a more open landscape to work with suppliers and supply chains and so on. It's all about collaboration, it's all about partnership. Trying to build digital transformation on your own with your own solutions internally can be a hard challenge, particularly if you're trying to do cultural change and you're trying to bring in new ideas and you're trying to get different perspectives. Often having an external level of change is good. What you shouldn't be focusing on is all of the smaller scale stuff, at automating an existing process. You may do that, but only if you've evaluated it first. Otherwise, all that will happen is you bring in shiny new technology, faster mechanisms, you computerize it, you may get to the same bad outcome quicker than you expected. Okay? So it's not about inserting technology into existing processes. It's not about replacing the paper and the people. That may be an outcome, but that isn't the starting point. Okay? It's not necessarily about reducing cost. It's about building value and building something new that you actually want the business to achieve. It isn't also about just taking individual, what I'd call lighthouse projects, and holding that up as being the digital project or the digital way forward. It's about introducing it across the organization, because typically those lighthouse projects deliver a level of digital transformation, but nothing around it is ready, and nothing around it can then talk to it, and nothing around it actually understands what to do next. So you have to do these as a parallel set of activities. And the key thing to bear in mind is that ultimately what you're talking about is what organizations do. What are the business processes? Because if you change all of those things in the green there, and you don't improve the process, what you'll end up with is still a badly designed process. And a badly designed process will always be badly designed unless you reevaluate it. You have to understand what the impact of what you're doing actually is. And the only way to do that is to measure it. Not just measuring where you think you're going, but also understanding where you're not going. Understanding failures, understanding directions, understanding whether you made the right choices or not. You have to measure that. It's about focusing on particular metrics, finding those metrics in the organization that matter to those stakeholders. So you have to take a representation across the organization, get those key KPIs that your business stakeholders will actually want to own and will want to actually measure progress by. It's therefore also about communicating the status and progress and doing that widely and doing that often. Good news and bad news. Okay, so if all you ever hear is the good news, people then wonder what's not going so well. So you have to communicate all the status widely. And you can see on the screen here some of the KPIs that you potentially might want to look at. It's about understanding things like net promoter scores. What do people feel about what you're doing? Cost, obviously, is important, but cost shouldn't be the key metric. Timelines may be a key metric, but it's not the only metric. You have to understand what are those operational KPIs, what are those risk registers, are you keeping those stakeholders informed with what you're doing, and getting their feedback back into your process via their KPIs. Because ultimately, what it's tracking back to is having that business value that you can say, digital transformation is delivering this and this and this in this sequence via these measures. Okay, Gartner would say that digital transformation is the impact of digitalization. So if you're not measuring the impact of what you're doing, how do you know how much you're transforming digitally? Okay, so you have to have a set of measures, you have to agree what those measures are, and you have to track against them, and you have to communicate them. Within version 1, and also in some of the customers that we're working with, we're adapting an initiative called Becoming Naturally Digital. And it's about making digital an instinctive part of what we do. And we're revisiting all of the processes that we have, all of the things that we've done during lockdown, understanding why we've done certain things and questioning why we still do some of the things that we do. Because we understand that the world has changed. It may go back to where it was, but it's still going to be changed by what's happening from a digital technology perspective. It's very simple. There are 3 phases. The first phase really is about acting digitally. just using what we have and trying to use it in a more digital way. And that might be just remote working technologies and understanding how to get more out of Teams. Are we using apps in Teams properly? Are we using other capabilities in Teams? Or are we just using it for voice and chat? Same for Zoom, same for Slack. Are you getting the most out of the technologies that you actually have? Is there more you could do to start thinking about it? It's about trying to get the culture of the organization to start thinking in a more digital way. The second phase really is about actually thinking digitally, about taking existing processes when they come up for change and understanding what those digital outcomes should actually be. What are those existing processes? How can we make them more digital? What are those new use cases that we can take Teams or those other technologies we've adopted and use them for? Can we do approvals via Teams? Do we have to have paper-based approvals? Do we have to have workflow? Can we not do it through Teams? It's about looking at things differently and understanding how we can improve them. Phase 3 really builds on phases 1 and 2, and effectively what we're doing is designing digitally. So everything we do, we look at in a different digital way. And there are 3 elements to this: reviewing, question, and design. So the reviewing piece is about people, it's about technology, it's about process, the standard things you'd look at in digital transformation. What we do, though, is we question all of those things. Why are the people doing the things that they're doing? Can we not put them in areas where they can actually do more things that are more interesting with more value? Why do we have them rekeying spreadsheets or rekeying timesheets or whatever the activity might be? Can we not find a different and a better way of doing that? And finally, what you end up with, therefore, is a design which you approach from the point of view of why do we have to do it the old way? Sometimes there are really good reasons for doing it the old way. Compliance, governance, regulations, there are reasons you just have to do what things are. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to say, we're not going to change something. Compliance is about making your processes comply in a way that the regulator set out. That doesn't mean you can't change them. What that gives you is an organization that's more able collectively as an organization, rather than someone top-down saying we're going to do this and we're going to do that, to let you change and be more agile and achieve that success by whatever way you choose to measure it, whether that's commercially, whether that's agility, whether that's being able to give a better level of care or a better level of service. So we're really using this very simple kind of 3-phase approach to try and build this into the culture with training and with activities that we're doing, and supported by technology, because digital transformation is business change underpinned by technology, not technology giving you business change. Okay? The technology is there to be designed and to be used in the way that gives you the transformation. And what you get, obviously, is an increasing level of digital maturity. Okay, so what we're saying is you need to question all of those things that you can see on the screen here. You may not change them, but you need just to revisit them and say, have we got the right processes in this area? Have we got the right technology and data? Do we have it in our culture? And culture may be something that's across organization. It may be between 2 organizations. But is it right for what we're trying to do? And finally, how do you keep it going? How do you maintain that momentum? So really, in summary, it's about driving the culture in your organization. This isn't something that you can impose. You have to be digital by default. And you have to actually make it so that the first way you think is digitally, not taking an existing process and trying to computerize it. You have to just think about it in a different kind of way. It is a top-down sponsorship and engagement issue, and that the senior leadership do need to set the tone for that take-up and that adoption within the organization. But that doesn't mean that's where it has to stay. You can democratize it right the way across the organization. It should be owned by everybody. In our organization, some of the best ideas come from the people who've joined more recently at all kinds of levels, because they come in and they question what we do. They try and understand why we've done what we've been doing for years, and they challenge, and we then adapt to that challenge and revisit what we're doing. Okay, so you have to spread it throughout the organization. You have to measure the outcomes, as I say. You have to be able to track where that business value is. Otherwise, you can spend a lot of time, energy, and effort, and potentially frustration in getting back to the same point and not actually adding anything new. What do you mean by business value? really depends on you and how you measure it. It might be commercial, it might be a rating, it might be a score. It depends what you want to make that value. You need to structure to have your organization in the right place. You've got to own your long-term strategy. So if you have a highly outsourced IT provision or a highly outsourced business provision, enabling digital transformation can be a lot harder because you're working via contracts and via agreement as opposed to by owning your own strategy. One of the key things that we find both internally and also with our customers is that you have to deliver what you commit to. So it's almost better to under-commit and over-deliver rather than the other way around. Okay, so think about things in a granular, incremental way, be agile, and all the things that go with it. And keep assessing, keep questioning, keep asking, are we getting this right? Are we doing this in the right way? Have we got to the right place? This isn't something where you'll get there and say, okay, we've now transformed this process, we can go away for 2 years and not look at it. It's about continually understanding how those things move with each other. And finally, a lot of digital transformation is actually about learning and acting. It's about learning from success, it's about learning from where you fail, but it's also about learning how to intervene early with early visibility and understanding what to do. There is no manual for digital transformation that will work in every time in every organization. It's really about understanding what fits your organization. And data is key. It's much easier to create a good process from good data than it is to create good data from a bad process. Okay, so having the data gives you choices and gives you options. If you haven't got the data, then the value of the process begins to diminish. So hopefully in this talk, really what you've got is an idea of how you can move from those one-off projects. COVID-19 gives us an opportunity in terms of the level of digital enablement that's now there and the level of questioning of some of that digital technology that previously was there. A lot of that has now gone away to an extent. What matters now is what happens next in terms of can you take that technology and bring it into the point we're now at in terms of hybrid working and digital transformation, and can you sustain that through? I hope you found this session useful. I'll be on the version 1 stand for a little while later on. Please come over and talk to us if you're interested to find out more. Thank you very much.